Tonight we have a special guest. Uh, when I say a blast from the past, we have a special guest for those of us that for those of you guys who she may be new to. This is my sister, my friend, my partner. Like she. All I can say is she loves her people. For lack of better words, and she loves what people are about. She's definitely been a bright spot in my life. Professor Drea,
Cute.
what
What's
up?
cute? What's going on? Thank you
Oh,
for the warm introduction. My pleasure.
it's been a while. It's been a while, and
Yes.
like I told you, this is a different audience, a different type of vibe, and this is more your speed. Some of the people that you like to conversate with, some of our people, and really being able to be people that don't just talk it, just be about it. So, Professor Drea, explain to everyone who you are. Like, you just popped up and was professor, or who you are.
And yes, I'm Andrea, Professor Drea, brown girl from Boston. I'm a blogger, professor, social worker by trade. So, I have my bachelor's and master's in social work. Clinical, so I did a lot of clinical work. Now I'm in the academia space. Just a lover of people, a lover of HBCUs, blackness. So I'm very in touch with my blackness. I always tell people my motherland besides Africa is Alabama. My parents, my ancestors are from this amazing place, this amazing state, however your viewpoint about Alabama is, but that's my roots. I'm just, black on black.
So, so explain your journey as a student, and with going back to your roots as ancestor of Alabama soil, but being from Boston. Explain that journey. What happened there?
Absolutely. So I'm gonna take it back to the road trips. I'm pretty sure folks who have folks from the South, you all took road trips to wherever your parents are from or grandparents from. So at the tender age of between 6 and 7, driving to Alabama. My parents are from South Alabama, so we used to have to go through 85. And I used to see this sign that said Tuskegee. At the time, it was Institute. And I said, "Oh, I want to go to that school." And I used to tell my parents, like, "I'm going to go to that school." And my parents, like, "What does she know about a college or university?" So, I was saying that from 6 to 7, that, you got to speak positivity. So I remember being in high school, and I'm going to have my lovely book. I read this amazing book called Up from Slavery in my 10th U.S. history class. I was in the AP class, and I was shocked because I had a really racist white teacher who taught this U.S. history class. But we got to Black history. We learned about Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver. I was like, oh my God. And then we had to read Up from Slavery in the 10th grade. And I was like, I'm sold. I'm going to Tuskegee. And I remember saying this to my classmates. I played ball. I told my teammates, I was like, I'm sold. I'm going to Tuskegee. I'm applying to that school. That's it. And my friends used to laugh at me like, what does she know about a Tuskegee? I applied, I want to say my 11th grade, and I got in. I said, F every school. I'm not going to any other school. I got into Tuskegee on a partial scholarship. So I wanted to leave Boston. And why I wanted to leave Boston, because of my parents said, if you're going to go to college, you got to pick somewhere in which family's going to be close by. Boston, for those who may or may not know, I always say it's the Confederate city up north. Also, too, very racist. They pushed a lot of the PWI schools that's local. I did not want to go to high school part 2 because a lot of my classmates was going to those local schools. I always knew about who I was as a Black girl, Black woman. The neighborhood down from I'm from Mattapan, which has the highest Black home ownership. So that's all I was surrounded with, was just Blackness, right? And people from the South, people from the West Indies, and I didn't have to go to HBCU to have knowledge of self. I already had that instilled by my parents. I just wanted to be surrounded by my people and just get the safe space of education, and also to unsubscribe from what I was educated on. But I had amazing African American teachers who pushed HBCUs at my high school because a lot of them, was from the South as well. So going to HBCU have really opened my eyes up. We learned nothing but Blackness. You walking on a campus with nothing but history. Tuskegee University is the only HBCU that's a national historic site. So to walk on a campus in which Booker T. Washington, the co-founder, so let's talk about that real quick. So Booker T. Washington was the co-founder. Lewis Adams was actually the founder. And how Tuskegee got started, Lewis Adams had no formal education, spoke numerous languages, former slave. He negotiated with the Democratic Party in Alabama to say, if you want the African American vote, you're going to have to let me build this school called Tuskegee. It was actually called the Normal School of Tuskegee. So you may hear normal school, you may hear training school. Normal school was to what? Normalize African Americans into educating others. Training schools was to train you to be, we was one, fourth, one fifth, whatever the case
Yeah.
is, to train you to be a normal citizen. My parents are products of Escambia County Training School. And I remember doing some research and I was telling my parents, like, do you know all the training schools was actually started at Tuskegee University called the Rosenwald Foundation. So it was this Jewish man named Rosenwald. He made a commitment to Booker T. Washington to build schools to educate African Americans throughout the South. And my parents was part of, that school system. So, like I said, I knew about, I've been Black for 40 years. My parents, going to their class reunions, meeting some of their teachers who, was actually, TI, Tuskegee Institute graduates. Black people in the South, when they know that, you are a Tuskegee University alumni, you are revered. They don't care if you done been the last person in the class to graduate, you are revered. I done had my parents' teachers come to me like, oh my God, your daughter graduated from Tuskegee. I'm the only person in my family to graduate from Tuskegee. I had, folks graduate from Alabama State, Alabama A&M, great institutions. They have their own, history there. But to graduate from Tuskegee with Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, a lot of great engineers, scientists, you are heavily revered. So you have to hold your head up high. And like I said, it's Black excellence. It's not just Black excellence because I'm getting a bag. It's just you are taught by amazing professors. I was taught by this professor, Dr. Frank Tolan. He passed away. He did not teach from any history book. He was the Wizard of Tuskegee. Now they always said George Washington Carver was the Wizard of Tuskegee, but Dr. Frank Tolan was the wizard. He taught us so much Black history about Tuskegee and other places that you can't find in the book, even in 2023. So I'm very blessed and thankful that I was educated, like I said, on a historic campus.
Let me ask you, because we always chop it up in our interaction and conversation. So on this journey, like, yo, I want to go to Tuskegee. What did you know outside of up from slavery? What did you know about Booker T? Like, did you know anything about his quote unquote politics, his way of thinking? What did you learn prior to going to school there? Because it's very important that I ask you that, because I know once you went there, it was like a whole another can of worms. What did you know prior, like, about him?
I knew that he was the co-founder of the school. I knew that he wanted Black people to have education. I knew that he had this rival with W.E.B. Du Bois, who is also a great, thought leader as well. And also too from Massachusetts. So I learned a lot about W.E.B. Du Bois and also, how they had that rivalry, but it was kind of still in alignment of we still want better for Black people, right? Whether it's you being part of the talented team or you teaching these practical skills. And I knew about, Booker T. Washington bringing George Washington Carver to Tuskegee and how George Washington Carver had all these 100 plus inventions. And you eat peanut butter, that's George Washington Carver. So I was like, man, I have to go to this school because of just, once again, if he can help produce practical skills within African American people, why shouldn't I go there and also enhance my skill sets?
So now, prior to this, you learning about Booker T. Um, you learning about his legacy, what he wanted to do. Now you're like, all right, I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna get accepted. I get accepted. Now I know you know about the quote the experiment. And what was that like? Hold on, I know. Well, just tell me the thought process. You was a young woman at the time, and just like you going there for education, but at the same time, you understand, for lack of better words, you're going to be stepping on hallowed ground.
I was sad to hear about the Tuskegee syphilis experiment for a number of reasons, because a lot of these farmers, still not getting their just due. It happened at the hospital on campus, John Andrews Hospital on campus. Even people who were staff and faculty had a direct lineage to some of these folks as well. And I'm always like, why Black people always have to be the experiment, especially Black men. And it made me think about the Black men in my family and how, this could have happened to them as well. But also to pivoted to that, I also learned in my classes, in my research classes, how Tuskegee experiment also had cards, the IRB. So anytime you're doing research on any humans, you have to make sure that you take a course in IRB. That's, to help with, are you experimenting on humans? Are you doing harm? If so, they canceling out that research. That even cancels out a lot of people getting their doctorate degree as well. So it was still one of those like, ew, I can't believe this happened. They actually have did this to African American men, without consent. And then also too is going to that medical apartheid, which everyone should read that book as well, because it talks about that. And it even traces back to just the gynecological issues and experiment that happened in Montgomery, Alabama, on Black slaves, on Black female slaves. So, that hospital, now it's turned into the largest bioethics center. My office is actually located there. Then they're building another bioethics center. So, it was a gift and a curse to learn about it and to know that more, education is being fulfilled on that. A lot of people don't know this either. In that same hospital, in the bioethics center, polio was treated in the African American community, right? So we just had a statue dedicated to that last year. See, a lot of things happen on Tuskegee, like we talked about the syphilis study. Then you also had, polio being treated and removed in children as well. So I think that, also just open your eyes up to the possibility of going back to that Black excellence is beyond the bag. It's beyond how you look. It's like, look what our ancestors have done. We have the blueprint, but why are we not following it? And maybe I'm pivoting to like all the way left, but the blueprint is there. It's just we have to follow that.
Having some pride of understanding, like we see nowadays, a lot of people are mimicking this meme, this statement. I'm not my ancestors. Huh? We know you're not your ancestors. Your ancestors had dignity. They had grace. They had excellence. They had decorum. Of course, you, not you per se, but people in general, not following and not living up to the legacy that their ancestors left. So, a young lady from up north, and north is a lot different. Boston, New York area is so different from the South, definitely the deep South, and it's different culturally. So now, boom, you jump on campus. Now, tell us this campus life and that experience and how it ties into you learning more about Booker T.
Ooh, campus life was amazing. First of all, in August in Alabama, it's hot as hell. Okay, that part of Alabama, you're like, why did I even sign up for this? I met beautiful Black people all over the United States and internationally. My roommate, shout out to my freshman year roommate, Dr. April Sky. That's still my girl. We still talk from Birmingham, Alabama. And I was like, what is a Birmingham? All I knew about Birmingham, all this Black history stuff. She looking at me like, this girl's from Boston. So we taught and learned from one another. It's once you are that orientation, you still like, man, those still my people. I still talk to people I rock with from 2001, my freshman orientation group. And you like, wow, look at all these Black people I'm going to be in school with and these classes with. We're going to grow together. Of course, I got homesick. I'm like, I'm in the middle of a rural Alabama, I'm not rocking with the food. It's hot. And going to the museums because you have George Washington Carver Museum, which you have to learn facts about in orientation class. You gotta take an orientation class, number one. Ain't no you just going to English history. You're taking an orientation class about the history of Tuskegee. Once again, I had to revisit from slavery. We have to read the book. We have to go to convocation, which is pretty much, you don't want to call it a church service, but you're learning about the history of Tuskegee while you're there, having that spirituality practice. It used to be actually required, when Booker T. Washington was the president and was also too educated there. Like they have to go to convocation. We had to go to convocation. Going to the actual cemetery where Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, all folks who, you could, all the presidents buried there. You're like, man, I can't mess this up. Because you're walking the steps of your ancestors. I don't care if Booker T. Washington was not my direct ancestor, but you're still part of the Tuskegee University family. Football season, HBCUs, we heavy about that football season, and also too, we're one of the winningest HBCU football.
I see you just went to the game. I see you just went to a game.
Yep, we have the Red Tail Classic. We have one of the oldest, marching bands as well. So, the camaraderie there. Then we have homecoming. Oh my God, we always have like 30,000 plus at homecoming. So it's just really, once again, it's a safe space, and it's about business too. Yeah, you're gonna have your fun, but in the classroom, let's talk about the classroom. My classroom size was like 25 students or less. Your professors back then, they will call you. We didn't have cell phones. They will call you like, why was you not in class? You're messing up. You don't want to go back home. So that piece, that nurturing piece was there. Not versus when you at a PWI, you probably in a lecture hall with 200-300 people. They don't know your name. You're dealing with microaggressions. You're dealing with micro invalidation. I went to a PWI for my graduate degree. So I'm so honored I went to HBCU because I felt, once again, I left Boston as a girl and I became a woman on campus. Beautiful Black men, oh my God, from everywhere, from different accents. I've been in New Orleans. I've been to so many different places. Like, oh, y'all got that food. Y'all got that culture. So I'm very thankful I got out my environment to learn about different subcultures of African American culture. People have money. People have maids. I'm like, wow, they got a maid. Some people like 4th, 5th generation legacy of Tuskegee graduates. I thought that was dope. I didn't pledge, understanding and learning more about sororities and fraternities, different organizations on campus. So I really learned a lot about, once again, subcultures of African American culture. Also, too, like I said, that history piece was there, but also being surrounded by African Americans, you don't have to deal with racism, explaining why your hair is a certain way. I have to explain my accent because, of course, I wasn't from down south.
You got a Boston accent in the deep South. I know they was looking at you like, hold up.
Like, where is she from? Really just being educated about other cultures, me educating people about my culture, and also too, like we talked about before, being warm and inviting and also inclusive, right? Because that was important too, as far as what that makes or breaks your stay at a HBCU or on campus. Like, man, I don't feel like I belong. There's a group for everybody, whether it's one person or 100 people. There's a group for everybody. But it's that I felt at home, and I think that's why I keep going back for homecoming.
Let me ask you, because I know this is I think that in my limited research, and I'm quite sure you definitely can identify with being from up north. We know that Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, they differed on a lot of levels, and they both had a vision for their people. And W.E.B. Du Bois, I believe his effect on majority of Black Americans up north was greatly affected, and more Booker T, for some other reasons, is not as popular as he is. So when you began, reading the Atlanta Compromise and the Industrial Negro, and these type of books, and understanding what he said and his vision for his people. How did that change your thought in process of basically challenging a lot of the values you learned from up north? Because up north, I will say that a lot of times people from up north, they can deal with their racism because it's right in their face. It's not really covert. They see it. And then, like, being from Boston, you ain't going to a section of town. You know what I mean? And when you're from down that way, you may move around a little different than you move up north. So explain that. How was that challenge of being like, hold up, Booker T wasn't he wasn't playing with these people.
Um, I know a lot of people don't agree with Booker T. Washington's philosophies. I rock with it because everyone's not college material. You need those practical skills. You need those trades. What are we seeing now in 2023? College is expensive. You got another outlet of trades. People with a trade get more money than probably I do. Um, Also, too, is Booker T. Washington once again, you know, people always say, well, if I was him, you was not him. You didn't live in the 1800s. Your father wasn't a white man that was a slave master and your mom was a slave. Also, too, he knew how to move. He knew how to get money or the bag from white people to fund what? Invest in black people. Booker T. Washington invested in Mary McLeod Bethune, which is now what you got Bethune Cookman. People don't know that. Booker T. Washington also too nicknamed Black Wall Street. It was Negro Wall Street. People don't know that. People don't know that he helped funded North Carolina Central University. They don't know that he started a Black Business League. So people always think Booker T. Washington was just wanted to keep folks enslaved. That's why I tell people come visit campus. You got this monument that's called Lifting the Veil of Ignorance. We was ignorant coming out of slavery. When you just say, hey, you've been free, what are you supposed to do now? Right? If you're on the fields and you may have been a blacksmith, you may have been this, you may have been that. Why not capitalize on that skills? Every building on Tuskegee University was built by students. And legit, you cannot tear down any of those buildings. You can, of course, refurbish them. So that's a skill set. Masonry, bricklayer. A lot of my family members, older gentlemen in my family, they built their careers with their hands and made good living and passed that skill down to my cousins and other family members, right? So people forget that he used that was their apprenticeship, is to build the campus.
Do
Also
you, do you
teaching
think?
people
Do you think?
that.
Let me. Oh, excuse me, Andrea. Do you think like a lot of people not really knowing his legacy of understanding, like, yo, you're a former slave, you got all the skills. Literally, they couldn't build a house without former slaves. Do you think? Let me rephrase it. Why do you think a lot of his information is not really mainstream, so to say?
I think it's not mainstream because I think people are pushing this. You want to be part of that talented temp, that elite class. And like I said, I'm part of that class, right? I'm part of that W.E. Du Bois class. I'm part of having multiple degrees and being well versed in my skill sets. And I think now people need to really look at Booker T. Washington's values and philosophy because we're going that direction. Everyone's not college material. Let's talk about that really quickly. I always suggest for students, and I tell people this straight up: if you're not going to college to have a specific, if you're not going for a certain industry, then I think you should go get a trade. Going to college is not for the faint of heart for people, especially going 4 or 5 years. You may come out in debt, right? If you have this amazing skill set, like I say, whether it's all the way from being a carpenter to a plumber, go for it. Because you can own your own business. You can take some business courses in that. But I think people need to look at Booker T. Washington, revisit that again, because I think, he's pandering to the white man. People pandering to the white man in the industry, in the music industry, to these, athletes, they doing the same thing. So what's the problem with
I call it partnerships, and then when it goes bad, you cry racism, or you cry that you was done foul. Which unfortunate it may be some racism in those partnerships,
right?
but then when the business goes bad, or you don't get what you expected, or you feel like you was cheated, then you want to use the race as a way to get to galvanize the people behind you. It's interesting with Booker T. Like, when you start reading his stuff, you'll be like, his thought on education, and how through skill training, through education, it could basically develop what we always talk about, and actually how we met, an economical base for the former Negro, the former slave, as he would say in his writings.
Mhm.
What do you think that that part of his vision kind of got missing, where people just got educated, and then, like, they turn, and this is me talked about this, some people get educated and they start turning their nose down on people that don't be educated. Do you think that was the premises of, like, yo, really pull yourself up out of the, I'm not saying pull yourself by your bootstraps, you guys, because that is a sarcastic comment.
Right.
But basically, you got skills. Like, I butcher, even though I don't do it now for a living, but I butcher. These type of skills you can't really learn on your own. So when you
Mhm.
learn these skills, teach them, and and change yourself. What do you think about that?
I definitely agree with you. I think we got our practical skill sets lost in transition, or lost in translation, because we have this degree. We're going for that CEO job. We going for that C-suite position. We going for whatever position. And now what? You got to have those 4 or 5 years of on the job training, or experience along with those degrees, right? And then I think it was a study that just came out as far as with white people don't even have to have those million degrees that black folks have to have, and they got that in. Um, I know with me being a homeowner, all I see who come to my home fixing stuff around here, I think I only have one African American gentleman. It's been Caucasian men. And I'm like, And I always ask them, like, so, how did you learn this skill? I just went to a 2 year school. And I think we forget that we have that side to us. I also garden. I know how to grow, my own fruits and vegetables. Those are things that I have learned. And I have other skill sets as well. But like I say, I'm trained to be a clinical social worker. I went to school, invest in that. But also, too, I do have that other skill set to fall back on just in case things doesn't work out, right? So I think we lost that because it's like, oh, I got all these degrees. Sometimes I even hear some of my sisters be like, well, I'm bored. I'm gonna go get my doctorate. You're further in that. You only getting paid for 1 degree. My mother always used to tell me that you only gonna get paid for 1 degree, which is true. You gotta still deal with the racism on these jobs. Some people still want to be that only one at the table, right? They're not cultivating other jobs, because if you have a skill, I feel like once again, in plumbing, you can also create jobs for your family and pass those things down. So I think, people really look down on Booker T. Washington. Like I said, it's going back to, oh, he was pandering. I don't look at it as pandering. He was getting money to invest back into the black community. Um, a lot of people don't understand when it came to agriculture and people who couldn't come on campus. Booker T. Washington had a movable school, which we know what now is remote school. He will go into the community and educate folks on agriculture, having a farmer's market. His wives, because he was married 3 times, they would each, teach women about breastfeeding, maternal health, hygiene, how to take care of your household. We need those things now because those things are lacking. I'm sorry. They're lacking. People don't know how to cook, clean, even have proper hygiene, right? So once again, is we need all those skill sets to be quote unquote, I say a whole adult as well.
It's interesting. It's interesting when you look at his writings, his legacy, and his vision for us. Perhaps if he was not or perhaps if he was elevated like other thought leaders at the time, we would not probably be in the condition that we're in. Like you said, even back then, um, everybody knew how to farm. Everybody knew how to grow their own stuff. And nowadays, so many of us complain about the food that we're getting, the cost of our food, when in reality, all you have to do is, you could be anywhere. Some people even be like, oh, I live in the cold weather. Well, you can still grow your own stuff. You get your own soil. If you know anything about, temperature control, it's so easier now with technology that you can still do it no matter what part of the country you live in. So you graduate from Tuskegee and now you go to grad school. Where'd you go to grad school at?
University of Southern Mississippi. And I'm gonna tell y'all something. I graduated from the Department of Social Work. My department chair, Dr. Taylor, that Black man taught me everything that he taught me about race relations, being a Black social worker, this, that, and the third. I have lived it. I was very advanced when I went to go get my MSW. You had to go in the deep, deep south of Mississippi. I went there because my education was paid for. I was like, I would go whatever. So I was ready. I was ready for those microaggressions. I was ready for racism. I actually helped with we had a staging at the stadium because there was mistreating undergrad students. I'm talking about white people. White students was mistreating the Black undergrad students and said, well, you can't sit in this section at the football games. And yes, we had played, I forgot who we played. Southern Miss had played somebody and it was on ESPN. So we did like pretty much a stagehand. I was called every name in the book. And so you have to be Teflon Don to go to school in the Deep South and at a PWI at that, because you only like 2,000 Black folks that go to PWIs, period, but especially in the Deep South.
So now it's a whole nother culture shock because you was in the warm confines of Alabama. You got your family's down there now. You went to Tuskegee. You learned more about your history, your culture, um, and the proud legacy that the freedmen had. A lot of people may think, oh, they just was free slaves and they couldn't do that. No, 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 no. They had all the skills after slavery. So you learn all this stuff, and you like, now you're going to real deep south in southern Mississippi, a state that's very poor. Uh, uh,
And the running joke is like Alabama said, thank God for Mississippi, because them too. Alabama and Mississippi is always neck to neck in the last of all bad things, like education, like you said, economic growth, race relations, all that, right? So for me, for a Black girl to go from Boston, knowledge itself at the HBCU to a PWI, I would never. I don't care if I have to do this lifetime again. I would never. I'm glad I went to a PWI for grad school. I couldn't go to a PWI for undergrad school. I wouldn't have made it because
so
back in my 20s, I was definitely fired up. I wouldn't have made it. Salute to y'all who went to a PWI for undergrad school. I don't know how y'all did it, but I'm glad that I had like my tribe of people. And I used to look at some of my friends. I was in this organization called Black Graduate Student Organization. Some of my friends went to Ole Miss for undergrad school. I'm like, you went to where? Ole Miss. If y'all know about the history of Ole Miss and James Meredith and people getting shot on campus to integrate that school, no way.
I think a lot of times, definitely for some people, it's more of they only see these things on like ESPN, so they think it's, as we would say, it's sweet and it's okay and it's fully integrated. I mean, you're really dealing with the hatred. So now you graduate grad school, right? And first of all, let everybody in the chat know where you work at.
So I am a assistant professor and director of field education at Tuskegee University. So my life came in full circle. So I am in my third year tenure track at Tuskegee at my own alma mater, and that was divine intervention, divine timing. It legit fell into my lap because of my work ethic and because of just the work that I did as a student, because I wasn't just a student. Like I was Miss Social Work. I was vice president of Social Work Student Alliance. I helped started the first literacy program at the YMCA in Macon County, which Tuskegee's at. So I was like the program director of that. So I did a lot of dope stuff, a lot of legacy stuff. So I wasn't just a student. And mind you, I was a nursing major first. We have an amazing nursing department, but it wasn't for me. And when I changed my major, that's the best thing. So my life is pretty much full circle. So yes, I'm a professor
So,
there.
there's been some very interesting things that have went on in the world, for lack of a better word, since me and you met. And I can say that, with what went on in 2020 with this pandemic, a lot of people, when it first started, a lot of people started making references to Tuskegee. Don't do this, because remember what they did to us down there. That's down there, and we talked about a lot. Did a couple of shows on it. And how is that experience for you? Now you're a professor there, and you got all this information, but you have information of history and information of what's going on in the world, and then your personal views of how you see things. How is that battle of how you try to pass it on to students on how to navigate their way through this journey of life?
Um, I always encourage my students to think for themselves and do more research, right? And do what's best for your body. So it's going back to everyone, like I said, everyone should read that book, Medical Apartheid, and think about what they did to our ancestors, what they may have done to you, when it comes to the medical history, what we still deal with as far as with Black women, maternal health, Black men dying at high rates with prostate cancer. And I'm loving that there's a lot of screening that's happening for Black men in prostate screenings. But really look at ask all the questions, because patient has rights and responsibilities. And I want you all to even look at the patients and rights responsibilities that also stem from the Tuskegee syphilis study as well. Know what your rights are. Ask questions. What is this? You going to inject in me, whatever the case is. You got the right to fire your physician and get another opinion. So that's my opinion on it. And I teach my students because once again, being a social worker, but also too, I'm a social scientist. It's a science to this thing. It's a science to these experiments, what they're doing on people, if you like to call yourself people of color, but mainly African American people. So that's why, I have really, and then I was a medical social worker for a lot of years as well. So I have seen the injustice even on that level of what they do to African American patients versus what they do to other patients. We already got a jacked up healthcare system as it is. So if you're doing yourself a disservice, if you're not advocating for yourself, and I always tell my students, you yourself, be yourself advocate. I don't care if you're soft spoken. I don't care, whatever. Always advocate for yourself. Even if you go on campus, gotta go to the health center. Always ask what type of testing you running me through. Do they give you a consent form? What about HIPAA? When can HIPAA be even? I teach things about that too. When can HIPAA be, broken? Even thinking about code of ethics when it comes to your industry, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in social work. I don't think we have enough education on that. Or people be like, well, I was to the doctor because they got this white coat, they're a guy. They still make errors. And there's still a lot of racism when it comes to just even, healthcare.
Usually, Drea, my feeling about HBCUs. I just think that what we see from the product of HBCUs sometimes is a disservice to what those of us that didn't go to HBCU should have been the vision. How do you keep others from being jaded? Like, yo, don't come here. You got an education from one of the most prestigious HBCUs. Don't be prideful and look down on other people that didn't have the opportunity to come here, but understand your place and understand your responsibility to people that you grew up with, people that live your struggle.
I love that question. I humble myself every day. And the reason why I say that, I am a first generation college student. I am two generations removed from my grandmother, and my great grandmother could not read or write. Okay. That definitely keeps me grounded. My mom and my father both have a high school education. My dad's the only one out of 10 kids that graduated from high school. That keeps me grounded and humble every day. I don't look down on anybody because people I come from a lineage in which, once again, hardworking people. They are, I always say native black to this country. I could trace ancestors back from South Carolina. One or two of them came from Sullivan Island that was bought and sold, came here in Alabama. Okay, so that keeps me grounded. I don't say, well, I got all these degrees and I'm better than anyone. No, because that's just said that I was, and it doesn't make me classy. I am classy. I didn't learn how to be classy in school. But at the same time, too, I learned how my parents always taught me to be humble. I give thanks to my ancestors because they actually paved the way for me to be where I'm at. A lot of people invested into my education, whether it's family members or not. And also, too, I tell my students that just because you got a degree, it just means that you pretty much enrolled into these classes. You met the credit hours for you to graduate. It doesn't mean you got common sense, but I teach them common sense. It doesn't mean you got better interpersonal skills. I teach them that. It doesn't mean you're a better person. It just means you got these pretty degrees on the wall. There's people who got doctorate degrees who work at Starbucks. All right. And life has a way of humbling you too. So I don't look down on anyone. Because once again, I know the struggle of both sides of the spectrum because I was raised by my parents who didn't have the luxury to go to college, but they're hardworking people and they was able to attain what they attained through working together. But I don't like people who like I'm Dr. Such and such because I work in that field and I see it all the time. I'm like, but you an a-hole though. You an a-hole. You don't have a life. People really don't like you. Your students don't like you. And if you're not a likable person, you're not gonna get far in life. Yeah, you may get the bag, but as far as with quality of life, you know, um, people really inviting you to places and spaces, it doesn't matter, I don't, like I said, I work in a space in which people always brag, I'm Dr. Such and such and call me Dr. Such and such. I don't even have a doctorate. And a lot of people think I do, but I don't. But it's all about how you carry yourself and all about how you educate people and your attitude. Attitude is everything.
All right, I'm gonna name a couple things, Drea, and I want you to tell me what you believe Booker T. Washington's view would have been on government assistance.
I would say that it was temporary, but you got the skills to pay the bills.
Um, Ratchetness.
Oh no, he wouldn't have tolerated rashness. He was very traditional. Like I say, he married three times. His wives died either in childhood or just from an illness. And with women, there's a place for women because women also taught women at Tuskegee.
Laziness.
Oh, he wouldn't have tolerated. Booker T. Washington wouldn't have tolerated laziness. He would have probably had to, like a skill set assessment to see where your skills are at and would have put you to work with an apprenticeship.
Whew, now I got a real good one. You might really get on me for this one. Reparations.
Knowing what I know now, I think Booker T. Washington would have been pro reparations. Why I say that? Because once again, um, the investments that he received from Caucasian folks, he invested into the community. And I think if he was to see what was going on in 2023, he would have been like, okay, we need those investments, we need those reparations so people can progress forward. But also too, I think it would have been more of a all right, so what's the skill sets that's gonna be attached to it so the money can circulate back in our community. Also, too, so the money won't end up back in their hands. What are you going to be pouring back into the community and investing?
Mm, interesting. Because if you do read his stuff and you look at, like I said, if you're from that liberal north and you
Mhm.
read his stuff, you'll be like, okay, now I see why nobody wants to talk about this man because he really was for about doing for self, doing for each other, pulling each other up.
Mhm.
And even if a person, for lack of better words, understands the talent and tough, me personally, I give Du Bois a little bit of leeway there. I don't think it's interpreted how he wrote it, and I think people
Right.
have taken it and they went too far with what he meant by it. Um, so do you think that we can get back to understanding Booker T's vision?
To be honest with you, Q, I don't. And why I say that, because I feel like as a community, if we are a community, I know we hear so many different things about we're a fragment community. I just think that we're far gone from the vision and the philosophy of Booker T. Washington. I think we're back to honestly the ignorant stage.
Mm,
We
mm.
got the lifting the veil of ignorance. We're back to the ignorant stage. And ignorance and on everything is out of order to me. Maybe because I was raised traditionally, I was raised a certain way. But things are so out of order. It's gonna have to take divine intervention, like this whole world to be reset. Even though they say the pandemic was a reset, it just got worse. It got worse post pandemic as holistic people, as people, with mental health got worse, substance abuse, domestic violence, everything on a different scale that is just really out of order. So I can see certain pockets of people with the forward thinking, but as a collective, because I like to look at us as collective. I just think things are so out of order.
I'm gonna ask you a question. This would be interesting. How you answer this one. What do you think his view would have been on the influx of immigration and the blanket blackness that goes on?
Okay, I love that question. I'm glad we touched on this question. So Tuskegee University was one of the first schools to actually open their doors up to international students. A quiet known fact, Marcus Garvey was set to meet with Booker T. Washington before Booker T. Washington passed away. Marcus Garvey studied Tuskegee Institute. What Booker T. Washington did at Tuskegee Institute, it was going to actually build a university similar to Tuskegee in Jamaica. But of course, back then, you talking about because Booker T. Washington passed 1914, 1915. So back then, of course, he was already sick and that plan was scratched. So, I think Booker T. Washington was open, he was innovative when it came to immigration. But once again, they had to what? Assimilate to Black American culture, the culture of rural Alabama, the culture of Macon County. So he was open, but once again, I just think that he was inclusive, he was forward thinking, and was like, sure, I'll meet with who, whatever, but understand that we already got the blueprint here. That's fine, you're gonna replicate it, but also to know who was actually the first one to start it.
He definitely had a vision when it comes to um, being a Black American and understanding living in the rural South. What do you think he would have felt about us city slickers up north, and how basically culturally a lot of us left who we were to chase this myth of up north and this dream of a better life up north? What do you think he would have he
I think he would have understood the purpose of why, the northern migration happened in the 20s, because it was needed, because people had to have that exodus from the south because of the lynchings, because of the murders, because maybe someone had took someone's life at night. But I guess to see, oh yeah, they're going for a better life. I think he would have laughed at that, like for a better life. I can see for protection, I can see for other reasons, but I think he would have laughed and said, "Well, you can do the same thing down here with the rest of us, because it's still a high concentrated, Black population in the South versus up north, especially the more north you get, like from in the New England states." So I think he would have laughed, but I think he would have understood under certain circumstances, because let's be honest, people always think, "Oh, I live up north." Like I said, I'm a Bostonian. oh, life is better. It's really not. You got concrete jungles, you got the projects, and a lot of people, the city life really did um chew up and swallow and spit folks out from the South because they didn't know how to adjust to that. I call it the hustle culture. You gotta be built a certain way to last up north. People think that, oh, I'm from the South and I can go up there. You gotta be built a certain
I
way.
mean, and it's amazing how so many of us, our ancestors came up north and they refused to go back down south, um, because the horrors of their childhood and stuff like that. Let me ask you a question. This is a funny one. Uh, what do you think Booker T. Washington would be doing right now if he had a smartphone?
I think that he would definitely be an activist. I think that he will be galvanizing us as Black folks. I think he'll have more schools. I think the schools will be now digital. It'll be more accessible. Um, I think that he will be going in his own subtle way on Black folks and breaking that stigma of Black excellence. So I think he would definitely, it would have been more like educational based, activism based, and also to being that provoked thought leader, but with actions, because it's one we can all be a thought leader, right? But with the actions behind it.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the things that's interesting. Like, even if you do want to look at them that gone before us with a critical lens, they not only were thought leaders, but they put a lot of things in action. No matter what the outcome or the ramifications of today, they did things that was suitable at that time. Like, you're living, and this is why I titled the show. You're living his vision. You're living his vision and his legacy of education and understanding how it's a way of doing for self and being able to provide for your family. Any final thoughts?
I just want everyone for once in your lifetime come visit Tuskegee. It's free to go to all the museums. The museums, the Oaks where Booker T. Washington lived and George Washington Carver, they're under renovation, so they won't be back open to 2025. Um, Amazing institution. Yes, it has its flaws. It produced 75% or more of your Black veterinarians, number one in aero space engineers, top space for STEM. A lot of the Black engineers was produced. Also, too, I have to throw this out there. Keenan Ivory Wayans is an alumni. Tom Joyner. The Commodores were started at Tuskegee. Of course, y'all know about Lionel Richie, Richard T. Jones that played in what was that movie? The Wood. The tall, dark skinned dude. The Super Soaker guy, Lonnie Johnson. Make sure y'all study Tuskegee Airmen, Come Catch a Game, Red Tails Classic, which produced the top five-star general Daniel Chappie James. And I can go on and on, but there's so many books. But make sure y'all read Up from Slavery. Then this is other book that I came across. It was talking about Booker T. Washington and Pan Africanism. I don't know if you heard about that, Q, but I'm definitely going to invest in that book because I thought, oh, I got to read about that because it talks about his Pan African views. And like we talked about, Marcus Garvey wanted to actually start a Tuskegee in Jamaica. So make sure y'all come and visit. Come reach out to me too. If you want to know anything about Tuskegee, even when it comes to emissions, the history, and other nature. But this is a good discussion. I enjoyed it.
well, we appreciate you, and I know that you're always open to definitely talking about your alma mater. And I know that you this is something that you take good pride in understanding who you are, where you come from. Your tag is brown girl from Boston. So you let everybody know, like, having that pride of being Black, having that pride of being having ancestors that literally came from the mud down in Alabama, and understanding that we at one point in life we took great pride in that, and we never turned our back on our ancestors, and understanding that literally we stand on their shoulders, and you carrying your family's name wherever you go, and you got to represent, as they say, show up and show out. But appreciate you, Drea. You always
Yeah,
been supportive of me.
of
You always
course.
been there for me. We're gonna one day talk about reparations in this space, and have a very interesting conversation about that. And we've seen how in the last 4 years have that how that has changed, gotten better, may have gotten worse. Um, we've been involved. We know a lot of people, and realizing, can reparations be a reality or just another part in time where it's just talking and just a bunch of nonsense? So, like I said, appreciate you, Dre. Appreciate you
Thank
coming on.
you.
Appreciate everybody in the chat for joining us. Remember, like, share, subscribe. Make sure you guys like the video. This is the way that the channel progresses, and this is the way that the channel grows. And you guys know, Dr. Short will be joining us again soon for another show. And Dre is probably somebody who loves her Dr. Short from afar. Dr. Short, and I always have to speak of him in these terms. If you know him, if you really get to know him, he loves his people, man. And I love people that love our people and really
Absolutely.
want our people to do well, and really want our people to finally get freedom, justice, and equality, because that's still on the black agenda. So, Drea, appreciate you.
Thank
Everybody have a great night. Take care.
you, everyone.